Less than 4 hours remained until my execution when my dog growled at the wrong man in that sound. My entire past came screaming back to life. The guard's footsteps echoed down death row like a slow drumbeat, each step reminding me that time was almost up. When Warden Thompson stopped in front of my cell, I knew why he was there. His gray hair was neatly combed, his eyes heavy with the kind of exhaustion only years of signing death warrants could bring. He didn't look at me as a monster, just another ending he had to witness. "What's your final request?" he asked quietly. I didn't hesitate. "I want to see Rex, my dog. I share news stories here every day, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video." Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you love it if you keep listening till the end. For a brief moment, Thompson seemed surprised. No steak dinner, no phone call, just a dog. His eyebrow lifted slightly, then he nodded. "I'll see what I can do." 40 minutes later, shackled and escorted by 2 guards, I was led into the prison courtyard. The place was nothing but concrete and cold gray walls rising high, crowned with twisted barbed wire that sliced the pale morning sky. A sharp wind cut through my thin orange jumpsuit, and I shivered, though I wasn't sure if it was from the cold or the knowledge that this would be the last place I ever stood. That's when I noticed the black SUV. It was parked near the gate, polished and expensive, completely out of place in a prison yard meant for endings. Leaning casually against its hood was a man in a dark suit. Even after 7 years, I recognized him instantly. Write in the comments and tell me which part of the world you're watching this story from. I'm really interested to see how far this story has traveled. Prosecutor John Harris, the man who had put me on death row. He looked exactly as he had in court, confident, sharp, victorious. Back then, his words had been fire, each sentence hammering nails into my coffin while the jury watched in silence. Seeing him here on the day of my execution didn't surprise me. Harris was the kind of man who liked to watch the full stop at the end of every sentence. The metallic clang of the gate pulled my attention away. A guard entered, holding a leash, and at the other end of it was Rex. My chest tightened. My German Shepherd was no longer the powerful, glossy-coated dog I remembered. His black hand-red fur was dulled with age, his muzzle almost completely gray. He walked with a limp, favoring his hind leg, an injury from the night my life ended 7 years ago. But his eyes, those intelligent brown eyes, were the same. I dropped to my knees, ignoring the chains, and opened my arms. "Rex," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Hey boy. It's me." This was supposed to be our goodbye, but Rex didn't run to me. He stopped several feet away. The fur along his neck slowly rose, standing on end. A deep, guttural growl rolled from his chest, sound I had heard only twice in his life. Both times, right before danger struck, my heart skipped. "Rex," I said softly, confused. Then I realized something that made my blood run cold. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were locked on John Harris. The guard holding the leash shifted nervously as the growl grew louder. Harris straightened, adjusted his suit, and walked toward us with a crooked smile. "Well," he said mockingly, "have you said goodbye to your dog? Let's not drag this out." That was when Rex exploded. With a force I hadn't thought possible in his old body, he lunged forward. The leash slipped from the guard's hands, and in a heartbeat, Rex slammed into Harris, knocking him flat onto the concrete. Harris screamed as Rex clamped onto his suit sleeve, its teeth tearing fabric like paper. Guards rushed in, shouting, pulling Rex away. Harris scrambled up, his face pale with rage and fear. His jacket sleeve was shredded, his shirt torn open, and on his exposed forearm was an old, white scar. Long, deep. A dog bite. My breath caught in my throat as memory crashed over me like a wave. 7 years ago, The night my wife was murdered. The night Rex came home limping, covered in blood, with torn fabric in his teeth. And suddenly, I knew this wasn't my execution day. This was the day the truth finally came back for its killer. The moment I saw that scar, I knew my execution had been built on a lie soaked in blood. Time seemed to freeze in the prison yard. Harris stood there, half exposed, clutching his torn sleeve, while Rex strained against the guards holding him back, his teeth bared, his growl low and unrelenting. That sound wasn't anger, was recognition, the kind that doesn't fade with years or pain. I took a step forward, chains clinking. "That mark," I said, my voice hoarse but loud enough to cut through the chaos. "That's my dog's bite." Harris flinched. 7 years ago, the night my wife was murdered, Rex had vanished. I'd come home to flashing lights, police tape, and her body lying cold on the kitchen floor. Stab wounds. Too many to count. I was still screaming her name when the officers pushed me back. They told me later that grief makes people unreliable witnesses. The next day, Rex came home. He was limping, his fur matted with dried blood, a deep gash along his side. Clamped between his teeth were shreds of fabric, dark, expensive material that didn't belong to me. I begged the police to test it, to look deeper, but they decided the blood was my wife's and the fabric was irrelevant. According to them, Rex had witnessed my crime. I pointed at Harris's arm. "That's the same bite. He was protecting her from you." Harris yanked his sleeve down, his voice rising. "This is absurd. I was bitten by a stray dog years ago, 3 years ago, my country house. This has nothing to do with this case." Warden Thompson didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked on Harris's forearm, sharp and calculating. Beside me, Sam, the older guard, who had always slipped me an extra blanket in winter, cleared his throat. "Sir," Sam said slowly, "I remember something. After the murder, you took 2 weeks off. Said you fell off your bike. Your arm was bandaged. I saw you at the courthouse." Silence fell like a hammer. Harris opened his mouth, then closed it again. Thompson reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I need John Harris's medical records from 7 years ago. Immediately." His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. The next 10 minutes felt longer than my 7 years on death row. Harris stood rigid, sweat beading on his forehead. Rex sat on the concrete now, still growling softly, eyes never leaving the prosecutor. I couldn't move. My heart slammed against my ribs, each beat whispering hope I was afraid to believe in. Then Thompson's phone rang. He put it on speaker. "John Harris," the administrator's voice said, clear and clinical. 7 years ago. Multiple deep lacerations to the right forearm. Injury pattern consistent with a large dog bite. Antibiotics prescribed. Patient refused to file a police report. Harris's face drained of color. "If it was a stray," I said, my voice shaking, "why didn't you report it? Why hide it?" Harris staggered back a step. Before anyone could speak again, Rex suddenly lunged not at Harris, but toward the black SUV. The guard holding him wasn't ready. Rex tore free and sprinted to the vehicle, barking wildly, clawing at the trunk, his desperation frantic and unmistakable. "He found something?" I shouted. "Check the car." Harris rushed forward. "That's private property." Thompson drew his weapon. "Open the trunk." Now, with trembling hands, Harris pressed the button. The trunk lifted slowly, revealing packed suitcases neatly arranged. "Going somewhere?" a guard asked. "Vacation," Harris muttered. "Europe? Tonight." Rex leaped into the trunk, sniffing furiously. Then he tore at a side pocket of one bag, ripping it open. Something silver flew out and clattered onto the pavement. Thompson bent down and picked it up. A locket. He opened it. Inside was a small faded photo of my wife, smiling. The same locket I had given her for our anniversary. The one that vanished the night she died. Thompson's voice was ice cold. Explain this? Harris collapsed inward, years of arrogance crumbling in seconds. His shoulders slumped. When he looked at me, his eyes were hollow. And then, finally, he screamed the truth. She chose you, he sobbed. She always chose you. As guards moved in, I realized something impossible had happened. The truth hadn't come from a courtroom. It had come from a dog who never forgot. The moment John Harris broke, the prison yard stopped feeling like a place of death and started feeling like a courtroom that had waited 7 years to speak. His scream echoed off the concrete walls, raw and unfiltered, stripping away the polished prosecutor who had once convinced 12 jurors I was a monster. Guards tightened their grip on him as his knees buckled, but no one told him to be quiet. For once, everyone wanted to hear what he had to say. She didn't deserve you, Harris sobbed, his voice cracking between breaths. An ordinary engineer, a nobody. I offered her everything: money, status, a future she never would have had with you. My stomach twisted. I felt sick, not with anger, but with the horror of hearing my wife reduced to a prize he believed he'd been robbed of. I loved her, he continued, desperation pouring out of him now that the truth had no reason to hide. Since university. I waited years. I thought if I became someone important, she'd finally see me. But she laughed. Said nothing ever happened between us. Said I disgusted her. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Warden Thompson said nothing, his jaw clenched tight, eyes cold and focused. I went to her house that night, Harris whispered. You were gone. I just wanted to talk. One last time. I wanted her to change her mind. He swallowed hard. She didn't. The world blurred as he spoke. My wife's voice echoed in my memory, firm, honest, kind, even when rejecting someone. She would have told him no calmly. She would have asked him to leave. I don't even remember grabbing the knife, Harris said. It was there on the kitchen table. She screamed. Tried to run, my hands curled into fists, nails biting into my palms. And then that dog, your damn dog, came out of nowhere. He attacked me. Bit my arm. I panicked. Harris's eyes flicked toward Rex, who stood perfectly still now, ears alert, watching the man with a quiet, almost solemn intensity. I grabbed something heavy and hit him. Thought I killed him. I ran. I was sure he'd bleed out in the woods. A broken sob escaped Harris's throat. I never thought he'd survive. But Rex had survived. And he had remembered. The guards snapped Harris into handcuffs. The sound of metal locking shut echoed louder than any gavel I'd ever heard. Thompson was already on his phone, barking orders calling state prosecutors, judges, internal affairs. Words like wrongful conviction, new evidence, and immediate review filled the air. I stood there, barely breathing, afraid that if I moved, the moment would vanish like a dream. Rex finally walked back to me, slowly, carefully. He pressed his gray muzzle into my palm, tail wagging just once, as if to say, "It's done." My knees gave out, and I sank to the concrete, wrapping my arms around him. For the first time since my wife died, I cried without shame, tears of relief, of grief, of gratitude for the only witness who never betrayed her. 3 hours later, instead of being led to an execution chamber, I stood at the prison gates. Paperwork flew faster than I could understand it. An emergency court order overturned my sentence. Harris's confession, medical records, and physical evidence had shattered the case built against me. Warden Thompson personally escorted me outside, his voice heavy with regret. "I'm sorry," he said. For all of it, massive gates creaked open. I stepped out a free man, Rex walked beside me, limping slightly, head held high. But there was one place left to go, and one promise left to keep. Freedom felt unreal beneath my feet. The city street outside the prison gates was warm, solid, alive. Everything death row was not. Cars passed, people walked by without knowing that a man who had woken up scheduled to die was now breathing free air. Rex stood close to my leg, his shoulder brushing mine as if to anchor me to reality. Sam, the guard who had always treated me like a human being, had called a taxi. When the driver asked where we were going, I didn't hesitate. "The cemetery," I said. The ride was quiet. Rex lay on the seat beside me, his breathing slow and steady. I watched the city roll past the window, feeling like a ghost drifting through a life I'd lost 7 years ago. With every block, the weight in my chest shifted from fear to grief, to something like peace. At the cemetery, the wind was cold and honest. Leaves rustled across gray stones as if whispering names. I found her grave easily. I'd memorized its location years ago in my mind. Even when I couldn't visit, I placed a bouquet of white roses at the headstone. "We won," I said softly, my voice breaking despite my effort to stay strong. Rex found him, he remembered. Justice came, just late. I knelt there, fingers brushing the cool stone, apologizing for years stolen, for nights alone, for failing her when it mattered most. Rex sat beside me, resting his gray muzzle on my knee, eyes half closed. Finally at peace. We stayed like that for a long time, two survivors bound by loss and loyalty. That night, as the wind carried the scent of autumn through the trees, I understood something the courts never taught. Me, justice doesn't always come from evidence or verdicts. Sometimes it comes from a faithful heart that remembers the truth. And sometimes it comes on 4 legs, with a scarred body and a soul that never forgets. Rex saved my life. But more than that, he kept his promise. Thanks for watching till end. Please like and subscribe my channel. I will be very thankful to you.